Hello, we're up to session 7. So let's get started. This session is about reflection and evaluation to strengthen programs and the principles and processes involved in being able to do this. I won't be talking on every slide. I will allow you to read some for yourselves, but there are national quality standards in the way we use them to evaluate programs, so the documents involved for this are important for you to know about. The National Quality Standards also has some elements that highlight the importance of educators being reflective in order to be able to evaluate programs. So you'll see here Standard 1.2. The ASEQA body is the body, or the auspicing body, that's guiding us in the way we need to do quality rating and assessment processes. So we call that ASEQA, Australian Children's Education and Care Quality Authority. There's a website link here that will also provide you far more details. I suggest you look at that at a later time. So it's important to develop policies and procedures in the setting. These help set practices for recording the ways we do things. So I've got an example here where you might want to look at the process of children's arrival and departure times, just as an example, ensuring that all children are signed in and out and that you are having staff check where children are at all times. You don't want any escapees. So there are a list of 7 quality areas that are involved with the self-assessment and quality improvement plan. And we also use principles and practices from the Early Years Learning Framework in the way we evaluate practices. Evaluating is about constantly investigating the success of what was planned and what was not planned. So we look at relationships, the environments, the equipment, resources, power relations among parents, staff, children. So it's about all the interactions for the overall program. So here's the example of a policy. Well, this isn't the actual policy, but if you were looking at a policy about the sign-in out and out process, here's what is usually involved in a date, name, sign in, sign out, signature. And here is a picture of a service that had actually gone through an evaluation of this process, and they found that there were many parents from refugee families with English as a second language, and they were sometimes not able to document the time on the sign-in process. So the educator got a digital clock. You'll see that there in the image at the back of the table, and that supported parents in being able to actually copy down the digital time in the book rather than them trying to work out how to interpret reading a clock. So that was a small, little simple action, but something that enabled the program to be strengthened by the way the families were being supported to be successful in signing in and out. So greetings and farewells, if that was something that you would be looking at as part of examining a policy, might be about thinking about where staff positioned when children arrive. Is there a chance to say welcome, good morning, and farewelling the families as well? Where is the sign-in book kept? Does it need to be moved? So it's important to see the child as a learner, the child as the foremost um, starting point in the way we think about what's the program like for them and how do the staff work with children and what theories are applied for pedagogical practice in how young children learn. Evaluating sets the direction in which to move and also guides us when changes may need to be implemented so that we're not just always doing something for the sake that it's been done that way for all time. One of the reasons we reflect and evaluate is to raise quality of preschool, long day care, family day care and outside school hours care services so that we can constantly think about the way we keep striving towards improvements and where we use our documents that guide us with sorts of practices and things to be implemented. So here, for example, relevance to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families, because that is within the document to think about in the way we incorporate Aboriginal perspectives within curriculum, for example. The SNACE website here is one you might like to look at where there's lots of resources, and that's the overriding body that looks after our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families, provides resources for educators. So effective educators use particular teaching strategies or intentional teaching strategies that can include what's indicated here. So when reflecting and evaluating practice, these could be some of the things that you work with staff on. Is everybody skilled in the ways they show these intentional teaching strategies? Do some staff need more help or guidance or skilling up? So when we use the principles and practices, we're also reflecting on contemporary theories based on research. We're looking at practices in the way they guide us to be able to ensure children's learning is being promoted. And we need to think very carefully about the principles that they are in practice. When these principles are in practice, then the early years learning framework outcomes for children happen naturally. Often people start examining outcomes, but they need to understand that the principles and practice are the underlying elements that allow the outcomes to occur. We can think about the theorists where we draw our information from. Which theorists resonate with you? Will you use a culmination of a number of theories within your practice? Is there a particular theory that you're drawn to? Theory is grounded in practice, so it forms the basis of our work in the theories that we use. For example, theories that inform us about how important it is to build children's social and emotional development by warm relationships underpinning healthy development. The importance of relationships and the way we interact with families and wider community. And the importance of the role attachment theories play for babies and infants. We can draw on theorists like Bowlby, Piaget, Freud, Erikson, Gardner. They all contribute to our knowledge when we have a good base foundation of what their theories involve. Intentional teaching, when the teacher is deliberate, thoughtful, purposeful in action to promote children's learning and development. If you look at this image, there's been thoughtful preparation, sense of purpose in the way the materials have been set out, organised, aesthetic, set up in a way that invites exploration by the children. So tools and processes take many forms. They can involve surveys, weekly reflections, journals, observations, photographs, interviews, checklists, lots of different forms of the ways we collect information to be able to evaluate. And remember, post-structuralist theories are those where educators tend to working with these deconstruct and make sense, work things out by thinking of different ways to do things. Here's some theorists that we haven't looked at yet. Jürgen Habermas, Paulo Freire, Michael Foucault, or Foucault, it's hard, I never know how to pronounce his name. So partnerships in practice involve children, educators, families, management bodies, government departments, outside agencies that you might work with. But it's also important to invite family involvement to be able to reflect and ensure that you're operating a service in the way that suits the context of the families you're working with. What do you need to do now? Have a look at the ECA Code of Ethics, read the ELF Thinking About Practice handout that's on Canvas, and undertake the discussion board. Thanks for listening. Bye.